in a moral moment, there's no bystanders. You are either complicit in the evil, you are either contributing to the wrong, or you are fighting against it.
Senator Booker, I agree. The last couple moments have been a moral moment for our country, and you, sir, have been fully complicit in the evil. The way you and your party has handled this Supreme Court nomination has been a disgrace. A disgrace to the Senate, a disgrace to the Supreme Court, a disgrace to survivors of sexual assault, and a disgrace to America. The Supreme Court confirmation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh has been absolutely disgusting to watch. The amount of blatant partisanship and disgusting swampy smears that have been present from the very beginning has been absolutely incredible. So let's just go ahead and just go back to the very beginning and trace the confirmation through from when it started. President Trump first appointed Judge Brett Kavanaugh to be the Supreme Court nominee back on July 10th, which seems like an eternity ago. But the story doesn't begin there. The story actually begins earlier, when protesters swarmed outside of the Supreme Court, not to protest any specific person, but to protest any justice that President Trump would name. It didn't matter who President Trump appointed, because protesters literally brought blank signs that they could fill in with the names of whoever received the final appointment. Groups like Narrow Pro-Choice America didn't even bring blank signs. They brought signs literally to protest every single one of Trump's final picks for the Supreme Court. Barrett, Hardiman, Kethledge, Kavanaugh, every single one of them. Now, people have every right to protest, but the part that's actually ridiculous is that Democrats were coming out strongly against Kavanaugh's confirmation within minutes of President Trump making the pick. Senator Bernie Sanders, as soon as Trump had said Kavanaugh's name, came out to the rallies to address them.
What's your reaction? We're going to do everything that we can to defeat this disastrous nomination.
Senator Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, spent considerably more time analyzing Kavanaugh's deep judicial record, spending a crazy 23 minutes before announcing his opposition to President Trump's pick.
Well, President Trump, with the nomination of Judge Kavanaugh, has fulfilled or is fulfilling 2 of his campaign promises. And so I will oppose him with everything I've got.
What makes these snap judgments even more ludicrous is that in the first round of confirmation hearings, Democrats were the ones saying that we shouldn't rush to a snap judgment on Kavanaugh. Isn't that right, Senator Feinstein?
It is to say, majority, give us the time to do our work so that we can have a positive and comprehensive hearing on the man who may well be the deciding vote for many of America's futures.
But sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Let's go back for a minute and talk about what happened during that first round of confirmation hearings. Or, sorry, more specifically, what didn't happen. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford sent a letter accusing Kavanaugh of sexual assault to her local representative around the time he was nominated, and Senator Feinstein's office received the letter in late July. Now, sexual assault is one of the most serious allegations you can make against a person, particularly someone appointed to the highest court in the land, which is why Senator Feinstein's office decided to do absolutely nothing with the letter. During repeated one-on-one meetings with Kavanaugh, during hours of confirmation hearings, during hundreds of pages of written testimony about Kavanaugh's judicial record, the subject of the sexual allegations never came up, not once. Instead, Democrats tried other methods to discredit Kavanaugh. They disrupted the confirmation hearings for hours with constant protests and interruptions. They called for the release of thousands of documents about Kavanaugh's time in the Bush White House, even though the Senate Judiciary Committee had already released more documents about him than any other nominee in Supreme Court history. They said that Kavanaugh was a radical, an outlier, an extremist, someone nominated by President Trump who would threaten the lives of millions of Americans for years to come. They combed through Kavanaugh's language at the confirmation hearings, looking for something, anything they could use to paint him as an extremist. And when they couldn't find anything, they just lied about what he had said. But when all of their tactics didn't work, and it seemed like Kavanaugh was about to receive the votes he needed for confirmation, Senator Feinstein unleashed her final smear. A smear which she released on September 13th, more than a month and a half after she first received the letter from Dr. Ford. A smear not to discredit Kavanaugh's judicial philosophy, but to destroy him as a person. A smear which was leaked over the objections of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. A smear which even Senator Feinstein said that she wasn't completely convinced of.
And this is a woman, and I really believe, who's been profoundly impacted by this. Now, I can't say everything's truthful. I don't know.
Right.
But none of that mattered. For Senator Feinstein and her staff, the only goal was to stop Kavanaugh, regardless of the kind of personal damage it inflicted on him and his family. Feinstein's 11th hour smear was perfectly timed. It resulted in mass confusion just days before the vote. It resulted in a 2-week delay before a hearing in which Kavanaugh could even rebut the allegations. And it gave liberal news outlets ample time to paint a new picture of Brett Kavanaugh. A picture of a drunken schoolboy willing to assault a girl, ripping off her clothes, while almost killing her in the process. Now this picture is extremely deserving, and if it were true, you really should make the case that not only should Brett Kavanaugh not sit on the Supreme Court, he should probably be facing criminal punishment of some kind. The problem with Dr. Ford's story, though, is that there just wasn't that much to support it. Her biggest arguments in favor were that she passed a polygraph test that indicated her story was not indicative of deception, and that she mentioned the assault to her therapist in 2012, 3 decades after the assault allegedly happened, but still well before Kavanaugh's name came out for the Supreme Court. The problem, though, was that was basically all Ford's lawyers had to go on. All of the people Dr. Ford said were at the party said they had no recollection of it happening. Her close friend Leland Kaiser literally said she didn't even know Brett Kavanaugh until the allegations came up. In addition, Dr. Ford couldn't remember key details about the party, including what date it happened on, where it took place, who took her to the party, who brought her home from the party, leaving Kavanaugh with basically no way to disprove the allegations and no way to defend himself. And Dr. Ford's story wasn't even the only set of uncorroborated allegations that were leveled against Kavanaugh. In that 2-week delay between when Dr. Ford's story first released and the hearing between Dr. Ford and Kavanaugh, even more crazy stories came out. The New Yorker ran a story detailing an accusation by Deborah Ramirez accusing Kavanaugh of thrusting his penis into her face without her consent, even though the story was run without any corroborating evidence at all. There were no corroborating witnesses, nothing to back up the claim whatsoever. Then Michael Avenatti came forward with the most disturbing allegation yet. He claimed that Kavanaugh and his friend Mark Judge had been at high school parties where they spiked the punch and were involved in gang rapes of different girls at these parties. The problem with that story, though, is that Avenatti's client Julie Swetnick claimed that she had been at these parties while in college and while witnessing what was going on. She'd been at high school parties where gang rapes were allegedly occurring and keeping coming back. Julie Swetnick also went on to change key details about her story in the future, saying that maybe she didn't remember if Kavanaugh and Judge had actually been involved in the gang rapes at all. She'd just seen huddles of boys huddled around different rooms. But that didn't matter. For a lot of news outlets, they just took the story and ran with it, even though there was nothing to back up the claim and a whole lot going against it. In fact, the more disturbing and the more crazy each story got, it seemed like the more coverage it got. And then came the day of the hearing. The hearing that Brett Kavanaugh had called for literally a day after the allegations had first came out. The hearing that Dr. Ford's Democratic activist lawyers, who had been suggested by Senator Feinstein, said should come after an indeterminately long FBI investigation into all of the claims of sexual assault. The hearing where Dr. Ford's lawyers wanted Kavanaugh to testify before Dr. Ford, even though in a court of law, the prospect of having the defendant testify before the prosecution would seem absolutely ludicrous. The hearing that Senator Kirsten Gillibrand suggested was actually a way of silencing Dr. Ford, because logically giving Dr. Ford the opportunity to present her case and share her side of the story is a form of silencing her. I could say a lot about the hearing between Dr. Ford and Brett Kavanaugh. It was a deeply emotional event where Dr. Ford described the horrors of going through a sexual assault and reliving them on a daily basis, and Brett Kavanaugh passionately defended himself, saying that he had never ever sexually assaulted anyone. But there are 2 things in particular I want to draw your attention to from the day of the hearing. The first thing is what Senator Kamala Harris from California said in her time to question Dr. Ford.
And so I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your courage, and I want to tell you I believe you. I believe you. And I believe many Americans across this country believe you.
In case you missed it, Senator Kamala Harris started her speech, and I'm not going to call it questioning because that's definitely not what it was. She started her speech by saying, "I believe you, and I believe many Americans across this country believe you." Did you get that? That's a sitting United States Senator saying that belief without any evidence trumps any rights of due process and the presumption of innocence that people enjoy in this country. And yes, before anyone says anything, the hearing between Dr. Ford and Brett Kavanaugh was not a criminal trial, so some of the rights that criminal defendants do enjoy in a court of law maybe weren't applicable here. But I would make the case that in some ways, maybe the hearing should have been a criminal trial. I don't want a judge sitting on any court who is guilty of sexual assault. That person should be sitting behind bars or facing some other form of criminal punishment. The other thing I wanted to discuss with regards to the testimony were people's responses to Brett Kavanaugh's angry and emotional defense. I saw a lot of people saying that because Kavanaugh got angry and emotional, that meant he didn't have the right judicial temperament to serve on the court, or even worse, it showed what he would be like as an angry drunk. Now, that's absolutely horrible. I mean, put yourself in Kavanaugh's shoes for a second. Imagine that you were accused of sexual assault and it didn't happen. How would you respond? I would hope you'd be angry and passionate, because if you weren't, I would actually believe your defense less. Here's what John Oliver had to say about the subject of Kavanaugh's angry and emotional testimony.
And when pressed on his drinking, Kavanaugh became either dismissive or outright hostile. And it was at those moments that you got a real sense of who this man actually is. I hate to say it, but I'm starting to think that men might be too emotional for the Supreme Court.
Well, Mr. Oliver, I'd be very interested to see how you'd respond if you were in Kavanaugh's place. Please, show me the correct judicial temperament for someone falsely accused of sexual assault. I'm happy to wait. Look, there's a whole lot more that happened in between the hearings and now, but I kind of just want to jump ahead. Judge Brett Kavanaugh has now been confirmed by the US Senate in a 50-48 vote to serve as an Associate Justice on the Supreme Court, and I wish I could say I was happy that this disgusting episode in US history is over, but I'm just not sure that's true. All through this last week, people were hounding Republican senators on the Capitol, saying they didn't care about sexual assault survivors, saying they didn't care about women. Senator Susan Collins in particular had an absolutely horrible experience, since she was undecided until the very end when she decided to support Judge Kavanaugh's nomination. Activists were collecting millions of dollars that would be donated to Collins' future opponent if she voted for Kavanaugh, in what Collins described as bribery and extortion. People were shouting at Senator Collins in her face as she was walking through the halls of the Capitol, and the amount of absolute hatred she got on Twitter is absolutely unbelievable. That right there is why I'm concerned about the future. Look at what Senator Kirsten Gillibrand had to say about Judge Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court. Kavanaugh is a Supreme Court nominee who is absolutely unfit to serve. Democrats aren't making the case that they disagree with Kavanaugh's judicial philosophy. They're saying that uncorroborated allegations of sexual assault are enough to undermine the legitimacy of the Supreme Court as an institution, and they might be grounds for impeachment of Judge Brett Kavanaugh in the future. I just hope they never get the chance to follow through on these claims. But anyways, that's all I wanted to say for today. I had a whole lot on my mind that I just wanted to get out there. With that said though, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it informative. That's pretty much all I have, so give me your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you next time.